decoy. Buddy, you get the ball, give it to Merle on the picket fence. He's going to take the last shot. All right, let's go. What's the matter with you guys? What's the matter with you?
I'll make it.
All right. Buddy, get the ball to Jimmy, top of the key. Rest of you, spread the floor. Let's go. Key.
They may be seeing basketball history here tonight. A sensational comeback by Henry. The score is tied at 40. There are 19 fateful seconds remaining in the game. It'll be inbounded by Hickory in the backcourt along the sideline. Passed in by Ray Butcher, who was responsible for the interception. It goes into Buddy Walker. Walker on the attack, still in the backcourt.
Gene Hackman passed away after 95 years of life, 1930 to 2025. One of my favorite actors and a guy that performed so wonderfully in 3 movies that I'm familiar with: Hoosiers, Enemy of the State with Will Smith, and The Replacements with Shane Falco, a.k.a. The Matrix, a.k.a. Keanu Reeves. Is that his name? The reason why I shared that scene wasn't necessarily because of the role Gene Hackman played, but it was specifically about the way that that movie was produced. So many times, basketball movies get it wrong. And I'm going to provide an example here in a minute. So many basketball movies fudge up the end of the movie. And how do they do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. They fudge up the end of the movie by allowing the clock to take a lot longer than it actually takes for a play to finish. For example, some movies show like 8 seconds on the clock, and it's clear that that final play takes about 20 seconds. And in the background of Hoosiers, you can see 6 seconds on the clock with Jimmy on top of the key with the ball. And things are moving in slow motion. The ball's dribbling in slow motion. The clock is also going in slow motion, but it's on pace. When the clock and timer goes off, it's an accurate representation of when the clock and timer should go off. And too many movies mess that up. Something that should have clearly been 6 or 7 seconds was like 30 seconds ago. Like, it makes no sense. And most of the time, in their defense, it's a Disney movie that messes that up. And I have an example right here to show you from the movie Double Teamed. If you had the privilege and honor to watch this movie as a young kid.
This scene is so mind-blowing, I still can't believe it. She is 6 feet behind the line, right? Looks like nobody's guarding her. We'll see. So there's 6 seconds, right? Let's pretend the clock is going as slow as it is in this scene. The buzzer should have expired right now. The game is over. The game is over. She hasn't moved. What is that? Who does that in basketball? I've never seen that in basketball before. Coach is yelling something. We're about 10 seconds past the buzzer now. Revving the engine here, apparently. Oh, so here comes the help. Apparently nobody was guarding her that whole time. So instead of going to the hoop and now she's inside the three-point line. How did she get there? How did she get there? We're now 25 seconds past the buzzer. Jab. Kind of a nice jab. Behind the back. And this is a travel. 3 steps there. And the game-winning shot that takes place 45 seconds after the buzzer goes in. As somebody who plays basketball or anybody who watches basketball, this is sick.
Double teamed. Like, you could not have messed up that end scene any more than you did. And Hoosiers, one of the all-time great movies, one of my favorite movies of all time, perfectly nailed the final scene of that movie with an accurate clock representation, which made it believable. Hoosiers is a true story. And that made it believable. So, anyways, just had to get that off my chest. R.I.P. Gene Hackman, good actor. Enjoyed his stuff. This is a Minnesota Vikings podcast. So if you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple or Spotify, thank you for making this podcast a part of your day. If you have not yet, check out the episode I recorded yesterday alongside Tony. One of the funniest episodes we've done. We were laughing so hard, and laughter is contagious. So you'll probably laugh as well. So go check out that episode that was posted yesterday. The title was called, Should the Minnesota Vikings Have Doubts About J.J. McCarthy? In that episode, we played a fun game that was called Guess the Trans Athlete. I played a video for Tony, and we had to guess who the trans athlete was. And somehow, some way, we were able to guess that. But that was the highlight of the podcast. So go check that out and be entertained. All right. Some huge news yesterday in the NFL world. The Los Angeles Rams, this past week, allowed Matthew Stafford to seek out a market, explore options, talk to teams, and try to figure out a multi-year deal somewhere else. So they did. They talked to the Giants. Somehow, some way, Stafford magically ended up at Tom Brady's resort, and sounds like maybe they even had a discussion. But then at the end of the day, the Rams and Matthew Stafford came to an agreement on a deal that will bring him back to Los Angeles, which seemed like the impossible at the time. It seemed like all signs were pointing towards Matthew Stafford signing somewhere else, being traded somewhere else, and then the Los Angeles Rams being in the quarterback market for potentially a guy like Sam Darnold. Well, that's all flipped on its head, because the Rams also were trying to get rid of Stafford's wife, because Stafford's wife has made public comments multiple times over the course of these last few months, and the Rams organization has not liked that. So they're trying to get rid of him. But somehow, some way, Stafford is back with the Rams. And I bring all of this up because now Sam Darnold's quarterback market should be exploded in terms of the amount of teams that want a quarterback are still the same amount of teams. You got the Raiders, the Giants, the Titans, the Jets, maybe another team that I'm forgetting. And Sam Darnold right now is the best quarterback option available this offseason to one of those teams. And according to reports by Adam Schefter and Mike Silver, Sam Darnold is going to be a guy that the Raiders are going to explore, him and Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Now, the Raiders have the Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll connection. So you think about that relationship and what they were able to do in Seattle Russell Wilson is not the same player he once was. But I do wonder if other NFL teams fear bringing Sam Darnold in at 3 years, $100 million. I wonder if other NFL teams aren't so sure about Sam Darnold being their long-term answer. Because as great as his season was with Minnesota, was that enough to bring Darnold in and say, you know what, you're our franchise guy for the next 3 to 5 years? Are there still doubts within NFL organizations about what kind of performance Sam Darnold can provide their football team? Especially when you look at the Viking situation with an offensive head coach, the best wide receiver in football, a great wide receiver too, TJ Hawkinson when he came back midseason. Darnold's situation could not have been any better. And the question that teams like the Raiders need to answer right now is, if we sign Sam Darnold to a 3-year deal worth a ton of money, is he going to be worth it? Or could we sign Russell Wilson to a league minimum deal and get almost the same amount of production out of it? That's a tough question to answer, because as amazing as Darnold's season was last year, he still has the past 6 years with the 49ers as a backup, the Panthers, and the Jets, where it was disastrous. So I don't know if Sam Darnold's quarterback market is going to be as hot and as spicy as we all think it will be. Because right now, general managers are weighing the pros and cons and looking at, okay, if we sign him, what does that do to this? And if we sign him, what does that do to this? And it looks like the Giants are headed into the direction of Aaron Rodgers. The Titans have the number 1 overall pick where they could trade down or draft Cam Ward. The Raiders have the option of Russell Wilson or Sam Darnold. And as much as Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings want that quarterback market to be super hot so that the Vikings could get a return for him, a second or third round draft pick, I don't know that it's going to be. I think there's a lot of teams that are quarterback needy that still have a lot of questions about Sam Darnold and the way that he can perform on the football field. And right now, the Vikings have to make a decision, because the last thing that they want to do is tag Darnold to a $41 million contract and then not have a suitor that wants to trade for him. And then you're stuck paying a $41 million salary to a guy that you don't really want on your roster next season. So that's why we have not seen Sam Darnold tagged yet. And that's why the Vikings are going to wait as long as possible to tag him. They have him until like Tuesday at 3 p.m. to do so, because they don't want to get stuck with a contract that they then have to pay and they can't get rid of, because they want the cap space. They want the flexibility. So should Sam Darnold's market be crazy hot after Matthew Stafford's trade? In theory, yes, because he's the best quarterback available, but I don't think it's as hot as everybody is saying it's going to be. I don't think it's as hot or as easy as the Vikings trading Darnold and having a ton of suitors that want him. I don't think it's as easy as the Vikings, if they tag Darnold to a 1-year, $41 million contract, there's going to be teams lining up at the door for Sam Darnold's services. And I don't think it's that way. And I think that's why we have not seen many rumors or speculation behind the idea of the Vikings tagging Darnold. So that's where we're at. even though Matthew Stafford's deal with the Rams keeps the market open for Darnold, just like it was before, I don't think there's a ton of teams that are lining up at the door for Sam Darnold. I don't think Darnold's market has exploded the way that we think it was going to, despite there being hungry NFL teams for a quarterback. So that's my take number one. Take number two. The Minnesota Vikings still do not have a contract extension done with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. And Ben Gessling, I got this via Purple Persuasion on Twitter, or X. I like to call it X. I like to call it what it is. He said this: one final note on Adofo-Mensah's contract. While negotiations continue on a new deal for the GM whose contract expires after 2025, I don't get the sense that there's any alarm over the fact that negotiations haven't led to an agreement yet. Adofo-Mensah has been patient in extension talks with players like Jefferson. My sense is he's taking a similar approach to his own deal, waiting for terms that work for both sides rather than rushing to get something done just to have it squared away. Everyone I've talked to about the deal expects it will get done. If there's nothing finalized by April, there could be more cause for concern, but I don't think we're there yet. I understand why there's no deal done right now. Right now is Kwesi's busy season. NFL draft, free agency, re-signing your own guys. It's busy. This is Kwesi's Super Bowl season because the regular season's over. You got Cam Bynum, Murphy Jr. hitting free agency. They've got talented players like defensive tackles from the Eagles hitting free agency. They've got all this NFL draft tape. You got the NFL Combine. Right now is Kwesi's Super Bowl. So right now, don't expect a contract to get done. But before it got busy, like in beginning of February or end of January, right along Kevin O'Connell's timeline, there was time to get a contract done. Now, Ben Gessling is mentioning that there's time, and Adofo-Mensah has played the patient role in his contract negotiations, just like he did with Jefferson and other Minnesota Vikings players, which makes sense. And when you listen to Kwesi, at least publicly, he's not concerned about it. He's not sweating about it. Who knows what that looks like behind closed doors? Because how can you not be thinking about that a little bit? This is your livelihood. And of course, he's probably set for life, but so are a bunch of NFL players, yet they want that next contract extension because it shows trust and belief from the organization. And who doesn't want more money? This is their business. So Kwesi and his contract extension is not going to get done right now. But why did it not get done a month ago? Are they waiting for this free agency period and the NFL draft period to play out to see what Kwesi did and what he pulls off? Because last offseason, the NFL draft was the NFL draft. McCarthy was injured. Dallas Turner had minimal impact. But his free agency signings were spectacular. We all know the players. Cashman, Stephon Gilmore, Shaq Griffin, Andrew Van Ginkel, Jonathan Grenard. So the Vikings were able to bring in guys last offseason that made humongous impacts on how good the Vikings were last year. Sam Darnold. So this contract extension, you expect it to get done, and you expect it to get done within the next month or two. But I think it's a fair question to ask why the contract extension was not done before the busy season. Was this a contract situation that wasn't quite as easy to agree to as Kevin O'Connell. Because Kevin O'Connell in his 3 seasons with the Vikings, first season 13-4, second season like 7-10, injury city, and then this past season 14-3. So when O'Connell had his QB1 healthy for the regular season, he won at least 13 games. And the year that Kirk Cousins got hurt, the Vikings were flying high and getting hot at the right moment, and then he ruptured his Achilles, and the season fell on its head when Josh Dobbs came back to reality. So maybe in this negotiation time between the Vikings organization and Kwesi, the negotiation is taking a little bit more time because Kwesi wants this number. Vikings are like, well, look at your drafts, dude. Your drafts have been terrible. They've been awful. Why do you think you deserve to get paid this when the amount of production that you're sending to the field has been this? Versus if you're Kevin O'Connell coming to the contract extension table, you're saying, hey, I went 13-4. I almost had us in the playoffs with Josh Dobbs, and then I went 14-3 with Sam Darnold. And these are all quarterbacks that I've been renting. None of these guys have been my hand-picked selection of quarterbacks that I want in this organization. So perhaps that's the reason why we saw one contract extension get done so quickly and why Kwesi's contract extension is still being figured out. But lots of things coming up. I'm sure there will be news earlier next week on whether the Vikings tag Darnold or not, because they need to make a decision quickly. And it's getting fun now because NFL free agency opens soon. Legal tampering opens soon, even though they've been tampering all weekend in Indianapolis. And the Vikings will have contracts done probably as soon as that clock strikes, whatever time it's going to strike. Because it's so funny how NFL free agency opens at 12:01 p.m., whatever the case may be. And at 12:02, Adam Schefter sends out a tweet of this player agreeing to terms with this team for this amount of money and this amount of guaranteed dollars. So in 2 minutes, you got on the phone with the agent when a ton of other NFL teams are trying to contact him. You negotiated a contract. You found that number that you agreed to and that the team agreed to. And he did that all in 2 minutes. It's the most laughable thing in sports. But that's coming soon, and that's going to be very exciting. Thank you for watching this episode and for making this podcast a part of your day. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening. And thank you for going on this podcast and journey with me.